Russell Westbrook is one of the most polarizing players in NBA history, and right now, he's living through a chapter nobody thought we'd see. Think about this. The man has earned well over $300 million in his career, closer to $500 million when you count endorsements. He could be chilling on a yacht, enjoying retirement, and letting the money work for him. But that's not Russ. Instead, he's in the gym every single day, putting up shots, preparing for a season that might not even have a spot for him. That's the reality. Russell Westbrook, future Hall of Famer, former MVP, one of the most entertaining players we've ever watched, doesn't have a single call from an NBA team right now. He might actually go into this season teamless. Let that sink in. And that's crazy because just last season, he gave us one of the funniest moments of the year. Hanging on the rim, staring down his old team, telling them to go home. Classic Russ. But here's the problem. The game that he loves so much doesn't seem to love him back anymore. So, what's going on? Why is one of the most explosive guards of his generation struggling to find a roster spot? Well, Russ is caught in what I like to call the Hall of Famer paradox. It's the same thing that Carmelo Anthony went through. The same thing Allen Iverson went through. These guys were too great to suddenly accept a small role. Too legendary to be background players. And NBA teams don't want the drama that comes with that. Now, there is one team quietly lurking in the background, the Sacramento Kings. They've shown interest. The problem? They don't actually have a roster spot for him. To make it happen, they'd need to trade either Malik Monk or rookie Devin Carter. And let's be honest, signing Russ would be the most Kings move ever. Because that's who they are. The Kings are basically the Chicago Bulls of the West. Stuck in NBA purgatory, average at best, bad at worst. Instead of building young, they've doubled down on win-now players already past their prime. Think Zach LaVine. Think DeMar DeRozan. Add Domantas Sabonis. ESPN literally projects them to finish 12th in the West. And now they think, hey, maybe a 37-year-old Russell Westbrook can fix this mess. Like, what? That's their master plan? Honestly, I respect Russ for waiting it out. Instead of rushing into a bad fit, he's letting the season start and waiting for a team to come calling. Because opportunities will open up. Look at the teams with open roster spots right now: the Warriors, Knicks, Sixers, Timberwolves. What happens if Minnesota realizes Rob Dillingham isn't ready to back up Mike Conley? Or if one of those other contenders suffers an injury and suddenly needs point guard depth? That's when Russ's phone will ring. But the real elephant in the room? The Denver Nuggets. Because last year, Russ actually worked really well with them. Nikola Jokic unlocked his game in ways we hadn't seen in years. He averaged 13 points, 6 assists, and even got votes for 6th Man of the Year. In the playoffs, he had big moments, hitting a clutch shot to send Game 1 against the Clippers into overtime, then setting up Aaron Gordon for the game winner. So why didn't Denver keep him? Here's the truth. Russ declined his $3.5 million player option, betting on himself for a bigger deal. And Denver basically said, good luck, you're not getting it here. Because while Russ gave them flashes of greatness, he also gave them headaches. For every highlight play, there were 2 or 3 terrible ones. Against OKC in the second round, he was a disaster, -92 in plus-minus. He averaged just 10 points, 2 assists, and 3 turnovers a game. Shot 35% from the field, 22% from 3. That's the Russ dilemma. On paper, he's a 6th man. But in reality, you can't hide Russ. When he's on the court, he dominates every single play, for better or worse. And that's why teams are scared. But make no mistake, Russell Westbrook isn't done. His career has been built on proving people wrong, and this might be his biggest challenge yet. He's fighting not just for a roster spot, but for his basketball legacy. Russell Westbrook doesn't have the DNA to be a traditional role player. That's just not who he is. Being a 6th man might sound like a title that fits on paper, but in reality, Russ is way too alpha to simply blend in. And last season in Denver, you could see exactly how that dynamic played out. The Nuggets' plan was simple: let Russ run the second unit. Give him the ball, let him cook, let him be himself while the starters rested. And honestly, when you don't have much depth, that kind of energy can save your team. But here's the problem. What happens when you do have depth? When you have multiple options and don't need Russ to dominate every possession? That's when things start breaking down. And this off-season, the Nuggets got deeper. They sent out Michael Porter Jr. and Dario Saric, but brought in Cam Johnson, Bruce Brown, Jonas Valanciunas, and Tim Hardaway Jr. That's real depth. And once Denver added those pieces, they simply didn't need Russ anymore. But roster moves weren't the only issue. There was also drama inside the locker room. After Game 2 of the Clippers series, ESPN reported a heated exchange between Russ and Aaron Gordon. The story went that Gordon called out Russ for his attitude, and one anonymous teammate said, "He's just so immature." That's a brutal quote. Now, Gordon did go on camera later to defend Russ, calling him one of the most talented players to ever play the game. But if you listen closely, Gordon never denied the report. He just said it was unfair. That tells you everything. You can defend the man's talent all you want, but the conflict was real. And when teammates start questioning you behind closed doors, that's not a great sign. Because here's the truth, even if Russ is technically called a sixth man, he doesn't act like one. Not on the court, not in the locker room. He brings #1 alpha energy at all times. And that's not what you usually want from a role player. It's why his decline feels so familiar. We've seen this story before with other Hall of Fame level talents. Allen Iverson was still a cultural icon in his 30s, but once his explosiveness faded, he wouldn't accept a smaller role. He bounced from the Nuggets to the Pistons to the Grizzlies, and it was ugly. A painful, messy exit for one of the game's greatest scorers. Then there's Carmelo Anthony. 10-time All-Star, one of the best pure scorers of his era. But once his defense and ball movement no longer fit the modern NBA, he couldn't adjust. Melo's reputation got so bad that for an entire year, no team wanted to touch him. Not because he couldn't put up points, but because he couldn't fit in a lesser role. Russ is different in one way, he has accepted coming off the bench. But the style? The energy? That's still the same. And that's the paradox. He's too good to be done, but too forceful to be a background piece. The truth is, this perception of Westbrook didn't just appear last season. It's been building for a long time. Think about how Russ went from being seen as a consensus superstar to suddenly being labeled as a guy you can't win with. That transition happened fast, almost overnight. But the roots of it go back to his partnership with Kevin Durant. For Russ's first 8 years in the league, he had KD by his side. During that run, he won Rookie of the Year, made 5 All-Star appearances, and even reached the NBA Finals. With Durant, the flaws in Russ's game weren't exposed. The world saw him as a superstar guard destined for greatness. But the moment KD left for Golden State, the narrative flipped. Suddenly, Russ was the guy left holding the bag. And without Durant covering up his weaknesses, the microscope got harsher. His shot selection, his turnovers, his inefficiency, all of it became the story. And that's where we are now. A Hall of Famer who still plays like an alpha, but lives in a league that no longer has room for that style. Russell Westbrook is stuck in the Hall of Famer paradox. Too good to walk away, too complicated to keep around. One of the first people to publicly call out Russell Westbrook wasn't a coach or a teammate, it was Colin Cowherd, back when he was on ESPN radio. He gave Russ a nickname that stuck with me ever since, the convertible sports car of the NBA. Flashy, glamorous, eye-popping. But when it mattered most, unreliable. Colin said, "Don't just read the stats, fanboy. Watch Westbrook in crisis. Watch him in big games." At the time, that felt spicy. Almost disrespectful. But a few years later, everyone was saying the exact same thing. The narrative flipped. And funny enough, Cowherd had pulled the same move years earlier with Carmelo Anthony. He called Melo a ball hog, said he couldn't run from who he was. Back in 2013, that was blasphemy. But time proved him right. For Russ, the turning point was Kevin Durant's exit in 2016. When KD was by his side, Westbrook was seen as a superstar with flaws you could live with. Once Durant left, those flaws became the entire story. The results speak louder than any narrative. Since KD walked, Russ has been traded 5 times, soon to be 6. He hasn't lasted more than 2 years on any roster. And in the playoffs? 7 first-round exits. Only 2 trips past the opening round. That's the cold truth. The Thunder sent him away to start their rebuild in 2019, and every stop since has ended the same way. Russ puts up numbers, brings energy, but the team never gets further. And for the first time in his Hall of Fame career, the NBA might be ready to move on completely. It's wild to think about. A guy once known as the most electrifying force in basketball, now struggling just to stay in the league. But speaking of careers ending suddenly, there's an even crazier NBA story. A player in his prime, with millions on the table, who just walked away from the game. He literally gave money back to his team to quit the league. At the time, nobody could believe it. But when the truth came out, it flipped the whole narrative upside down. So why did Larry Sanders walk away from basketball?